In the previous videos, we spoke about the information and details here on the left hand side of the circuit edit menu. We're going to be taking a look at the tabs and the details that we will be setting here on the right hand side of the circuit edit menu. Our first tab that is available to us is the phase neutral conductor. Here, this is where we can select information to do with the type of cable, how it is being run, the installation method, length and size of the conductors that are being selected. Here on the right hand side is where we can see the cable that we currently have selected for this final circuit. If I use the drop down menu, you will see that a number of cables are available in relation to this type of installation. You may also note that here there is references to the tables related to BS7671. On other cables, you will note that there is manufacturer specific data that has been used in the software. This is where the manufacturer data differs from the generic data found within the tables of BS7671. To the left hand side, you will note that we have the British standard options currently selected, which then show in our drop down menu for all the British standard cables within ElectricalOM. ElectricalOM caters for a number of standards which are applicable throughout the European Union or those countries that use IEC standard information. For instance, we also have the IEC standards for Indian standard cables, European standard cables, South African national standard, network rail standard, and also busbar trunking systems. Here, if I select for instance the European standards, you will see that the list will change to cable types that do not necessarily have British standards, however do come under IEC EN standards. As these lists can be quite long, we also have filter tools available to help any designer in terms of selecting the cable that they're looking for. The list can be filtered between copper conductors and aluminium conductors. Here, if I select the aluminium conductors, you will see that the information in the list has changed in relation to the type of conductor selected. To the right hand side of that, we can also identify what type of insulator we are looking for and the kind of cable we are looking for. What this relates to from the insulators is whether the cable is a PVC, XLPE or mineral type cable. Here, if I select an XLPE, I can then go further down my filter list on my kinds and select from armoured, non-armoured, busbar or flexible type cables. For this example, I'm going to use the armoured selection. I will now see the type of cables that are available to me within those parameters we've set. Here now I'm going to select single core 90 degree XLPE non-magnetic armoured cable. You may have also noticed while we were making these changes that the category for the installation and the method also changed. This is because depending on the type of cable we select within ElectricalOM, the software will automatically filter out types of installation method that are not applicable to the cables that we have selected. We can then choose the wire itself, how many cores it's going to have, in terms of whether or not it's a 3-phase and neutral cable or simply a 3-phase cable. This will be reflected in the makeup of our cable here. Over to the right hand side of the options, we can see that various other tick boxes are now available. These relate to additional properties that we may require this cable to have. For instance, FR refers to whether or not the cable must be fire resistant. We can also specify whether or not the cable must be run to 70 degrees. This may be dependent upon the type of equipment that you are connecting to either side of your cable. Below this, we can then select cable may need to be either a low smoke and fume cable or a low smoke halogen free cable. Once we've selected our cable and the information related to it, we can then select the type of installation and the reference method to which that cable is being installed with. Here on our reference method, you can see that again we have quite a long list. To shorten this down, I can change the category of how this cable is going to be run. For instance, in this example, I'm going to use either on-tray, ladder or free air. You will see then that the method list has now become shorter, only referencing methods within that particular category. Below this, we can specify the length of our cable. Depending on the length of our cable, we'll also change what the impedance values are going to be for this particular circuit. As you can see, as we make changes, live calculations are constantly taking place within the software. For this example, I'm going to use a 30 meter cable and I'm going to leave my cross-sectional area as 50 millimeters. We can also select things like parallel conductors, but we're going to come back and look at this shortly later in the video. At the bottom here, we have user-defined current carrying capacity, where we try to endeavour to have as many forms of cable within the system as possible. We may not have a particular type of manufactured cable that you are requiring. In this case, we have this option available, where if you have the manufacturer's information for the cable, you can select the cable system as close as possible and then manually define what the current carrying capacity of that cable is. This will override the current carrying capacity defined by selecting the cross-sectional area of the cable. Please note, however, you may still want to specify the cross-sectional area of the cable to ensure that the correct size cable is installed on site. Now that I have selected my protected device, a warning has popped up in the software immediately identifying that there is an issue with the cross-sectional area cable in terms of the current carrying capacity that I selected earlier. Here, now with the cross-sectional area, you will note that the cable size and rating has appeared red marked. This is identified by the software that this particular cable is not adequate for the size of device that we currently have selected. We can see here from our minimum IZ that our cable needs to be a minimum of 640 amps. By selecting this drop down menu, we can see the different sizes of cable available. We can also see that the cables that do not meet the minimum criteria have been marked red by the software. By using the Find button here, the software will automatically select the smallest size of cable available, which complies with the requirements of the protective device. However, if we are to use parallel conductors, I can select the number of conductors that we will be using in parallel, and the software will now adjust to show additional cable sizes. You will also note that the minimum IZ is adjusted, calculating for the fact that we will be using parallel conductors. Additionally, where we are using single core cables, such as this particular type of installation, neutral conductors can also be sized separately. By selecting the Set Neutral Conductor icon here, we can also specify what the size of the neutral conductor is going to be. This may be selected, particularly in user requirements around any neutral conductor currents that we have calculated on our system. Again, with neutral conductors, parallel conductors can also be selected.